Hey folks, I am Troy and you're watching TroyTube. Today we're going to do a little bit different take on a video. We're going to talk about making money with our Cricut or any other cutting machine or 3D printer, laser cutter, different things. And so stick with me, we'll be right back. So one of the big topics out there, of course, is how do you make money as a small business making and selling things with your Cricut or any other cutter or machine that can produce products. And these are consumer products, direct to consumer. So you're making things generally and selling them to consumers. Now, sometimes in that environment, you might tag on a small business who wants a bunch of shirts or mugs or something like that, maybe their logo or something like that. I actually walk away from a lot of that business. I'll tell you why when we get to there and get to that in a little bit. But we're going to talk about how we did this when Tammy and I first started crafting back in January 2015, so over 7 years ago when we bought our first Cricut machine. And if you followed me for a while, you've heard the story of how we did that. Then we built the business selling vinyl and everything. I was out of work for a short period of time. I worked in IT for 20 plus years, almost 25 years. And I was out of work for a short period of time. Tammy decided she wanted to buy a Cricut machine. I initially said I don't want anything to do with it. She, kept talking about it. All I could think about was these commercials I saw years ago with this little teenage girl cranking these things through a machine or whatever. And so she finally talked me into going and buying one. It was January. You couldn't find one anywhere. I drove 2 hours to Columbus, Indiana to buy one at a Menards and brought it home, hooked it up, and in 15 minutes was cutting out these little intricate things out of cardstock, playing around with it. And with my background, I looked at it. I actually sent her a text and I said, this is my exact words, pardon my language, but I sent her a text and I said, this thing's badass. And then the next day, I think that was a Saturday, and on Sunday, I started working with vinyl and some other products. I put it back in the box, got frustrated with it. I put it on her desk and I said, I don't ever want to see it again. So Monday morning, I was still unemployed, didn't have anything to do. And I said, I can't let this thing beat me. I got it back out of the box, started messing with it, started doing a little research and reading. And, it was on my desk for like 2 years after that. And what happened was we started selling crafts to pay our bills for a while. And this went on for like 6 months or so where we were making and selling crafts and literally paying our bills. But not only paying our bills, we were making more money than we probably made for a while doing this. And, and things weren't particularly good financially for us at the time. We were struggling. The economy was bad. A lot of things were going on. And, it was a rough time for us, and we made a pretty good team doing this. And so what it came down to was, and this was back before Facebook Marketplace was out. Facebook groups had kind of started to take off a little bit, and there were a lot of groups that were yard sale pages. That's what most of the Facebook groups were. And here in Louisville, Kentucky, there were, I guess with same in most areas, there were little areas and yard sale pages for every little area around town and around the county and so forth. And Tammy would post these things for sale, and she would take orders, and I would be in my office in the basement like 14, 15 hours a day making things. She would be out delivering them and taking orders and bringing me the orders, and I would be cranking them out, and we'd be working on them together, and we made quite the team, busting these things out and getting them done. Most of our crafts we sold at the time, a ton of them were Dollar Tree crafts. So we were buying things for $1, maybe a couple of items, so we had $2 in it, personalizing them and selling them for $20, $25. And that was for our time. The material was pennies for the vinyl and things that we were using, a couple of bucks for the items, and people would pay a good amount of money for something that was personalized. What we realized after we started seeing all the names, that a lot of this industry was driven on personalization, because names are spelt really odd these days and really different. Not, even my name. When I was a kid, I couldn't find anything with my name on it. My name was really different. I only knew one other Troy the whole time I was growing up. And I couldn't find a pocket knife with my name on it, couldn't find a bicycle license plate with my name on it. They just didn't exist. Well, now my name's everywhere, and it's all these other names. So there's a lot of, people using hyphens and hyphens and apostrophes and just different spellings of names and things like that. So it's almost impossible to find things that are personalized without them being custom made. And that's what drove a lot of this industry. A lot of the crafting industry you were able to do these things on short runs, on a short notice, pump them out very easily, and get them out to people. And they ate it up, quite honestly. So the title of this video was, how to make $10,000 a month with your Cricut. And, that's a pretty accurate statement, because we did that a couple of times probably. And I'll give you the one good example we used. We bought our Cricut in January. It took me probably 2 or 3 weeks to really learn how to use it and really work with the materials and start to get a foundation down to where we felt comfortable doing things and selling them. And, one piece of advice I would give to anyone doing this and planning on selling anything is experiment, trial and error, learn, practice more after that. Do your research, understand and know what you're doing before you start advertising that you can make things. There's so many people who go out and buy a machine, and then they just start saying they can do this, they can make these things, and then when it comes time to do it, they have failures and they get frustrated and they develop a bad reputation. It doesn't last very long, and they're out of business. And so I really advise everyone to take the time to learn the products, learn what you're working with. Find, if you're going to do shirts, find the brands of shirts that you like and you are familiar with, not only for the material and how they feel, but how they're sized, things like that. And so you want to get all of those things out of the way and be comfortable before you launch your business doing that. Now, the other thing, I made a video about this once before, a couple of years ago probably, and talked about this. When you're starting a small business like this, a lot of people like to plan a lot of things, and that's a crutch for a lot of people. And they will go out, they'll spend tons of money on the machine, material, supplies, file cabinets and desks and tables and workspaces and tools and just everything they could possibly need, but they don't have the first customer yet. So my advice is to minimize those kind of things. The most important thing is to be able to make your items and be confident with them and know what you're doing, and then get something sold, get something off the ground and get it moving before you spend all that time on all those things and you end up with a room full of supplies and tools and craft tables and all that with no customers to pay for it, and you end up with a lot of frustration and a lot of debt too. And so those things can be tough to deal with. So make sure you know what you're doing. Don't spend too much time planning and organizing and all those things before you actually just get off the ground and do something once you feel comfortable and confident. So we started ours in, probably sometime in February, and started to sell some items here and there. And then what really hit us was when March hit, and we started to see the bump in sales for Easter personalization. So the real driver for personalized items is children. Easter, Halloween, Christmas, and so forth. Birthdays, of course, and then other special events like cheerleading events, things like that, or cheer teams and all those wedding parties that, a lot of people make the coat hangers with all the bridesmaids' names on them and things like that. And so those personalization is a big driver. So March hit us, and we were making Easter buckets personalized and buying the buckets at Dollar Tree for $1, of course. At the time, now I guess they were $1.25 or whatever. But we were buying a stuffed animal, a rabbit or a little stuffed animal that they put out for Easter that were $1 at the time. So those are $1.25 now if you can find them. So we had $2 in the stuffed animal in the bucket. We would personalize the bucket, personalize the stuffed animal, sell it for usually $20 to $25, depending on what they were and everything. Now, here's the tricky part for us, and this is what we did. This was back when we first got started. We did this, there's a couple things about the way we did this. One was we needed the money. We were, like I said, we were strapped for cash financially several years ago and had to get something off the ground. So we took orders on the honor system. Another reason we did that was because we had so little money invested in the product we were selling. The stuffed animals, we couldn't do anything with them once they had the heat transfer vinyl on them. At least back then we didn't know how to remove the transfer vinyl. I don't even know if it would be a good idea to do that now anyway. But the plastic buckets, you could strip the vinyl off and reuse them if you had to. Tammy was out, online selling these things, taking the orders, making the deliveries, and going out and meeting people in nice public places where there's no danger or anything, and making those deliveries, collecting the money, bringing me new orders and so forth. A lot of repeat business. I mean, it spread like wildfire, it's just like a spider web. So one person would order stuff. Next thing we knew, we had a referral from them to somebody else, or maybe that person all of a sudden decided they wanted it for all their grandchildren, and it just kind of blew up all of a sudden for us. We sold that first month. This will kind of blow your mind a little bit. That first month, that in March before Easter that year, I think Easter was kind of early in April that year, we sold 350 of those Easter buckets alone. So 350, do the math, times 20, that's $7,000 in those Easter buckets. We had about 30 of them that did not get picked up by the customers. So less than 10% of them didn't get picked up. So out of that $7,000 we made, when you look at the cost of what we didn't get picked up and we were kind of stuck with, $2 times 30, we had $60 plus a little bit of vinyl. Let's say it was 40. So we maybe had $100 in material, but 30 of those buckets we were able to strip the vinyl off and reuse them. And we actually did that the following year. The permanent vinyl does not stick, any kind of vinyl really, doesn't stick that well to plastics. So the plastics have, there's plasticizers in those plastics, there's plasticizers in vinyl. The adhesive doesn't bond to it that well. And so while it sticks to it, especially if it's larger pieces of vinyl, now thin little pieces probably won't stick that great. But those buckets were, nice glossy finish. You could put the vinyl on it. And, over a year later, you were able to just kind of pick the vinyl and just strip it right off. It was not a problem. But it did stay on okay. You just couldn't, you didn't want to, of course, put that through the dishwasher or anything like that. But it worked out well for us. And with all the other items we sold that month, I'm confident we probably sold at least $10,000 or $12,000 worth of products that month. And we went on for several months to make and sell, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of items through the crafting, through the Facebook groups, just selling crafts and using it to pay our bills until I took on another full-time job and we had to scale back on it and everything, and then eventually led to that meeting my business partner and starting company later on. So we had, we saw a great deal of success from that, and I learned a lot from it. Not only did I learn how to use the materials, learn how to use the software, learn how to use Inkscape. That's where all of my YouTube videos, originated from. While I was making things, I was in the Cricut Design Space group, Facebook group. That was big, and it's always been the biggest group, I think. When I joined it, it only had about 17,000 people in it in January of 2015. Now it's approaching 500,000 people. And I sat there and just helped people. Kind of became the IT guy helping people in those craft groups while I was working on things, and learned a lot from other people while I was helping people. So people would ask a question and I would be the one to go find the answer if I didn't know. So those things I enjoy. And we were able to leverage that and just keep making things for people, from Dollar Tree. Now I'll give you an example of what we did. Now this is a kind of a rectangular or trapezoid shaped bucket. The buckets we were making weren't shaped like this. They were actually shaped more like this, the scalloped bucket. This is just a bigger version. This is what Dollar Tree has now. They don't have like the bright fun colors that you can really use for Easter anymore that I saw. They used to be more like this. They have these more darker dull colors, but they were more this size but shaped like this. They were $1, $1.25 now. And then we put that stuffed animal with it, and you could certainly use these or some of the other ones. I've got some others laying around here somewhere. They're like bright green. You could probably do Minecraft themes on them or whatever, and personalize them. You do real well with that. A lot of people talk about the competition. How many people are out there? Cricut has sold millions and millions of machines. All the other machines that are on the market from different brands, competitors, you've got Silhouette and Brother and all the different ones that are out there, the bigger cutters that are on the market, the more commercial cutters that a lot of people kind of graduate up to. There are laser cutters out there now. There's just a lot of options for it. And so people talk about all the competition, that everybody's doing it. There's just no hope of making money because everybody's doing it. And for those people that think that, what I would say is don't pay attention so much to what other people do. And I've got a book over here I'm going to show you real quick. So years ago, Tammy and I had built a few different e-commerce online stores that were fairly successful. We had a store we sold collegiate licensed merchandise for West Virginia University and for University of Kentucky and so forth. We used to make paracord items, handcrafted paracord bracelets and lanyards and things, and did a lot of business with those. I always said I didn't really pay attention, don't copy what your competition does. You want to go out and try to duplicate someone else's business model, because that's what went on in their head and you're not them. So while I'll pay attention to competition and just kind of watch, don't copy them and do your own thing. You do what works for you. And I said that for years. A few years ago, I stumbled across this book, and lo and behold, somebody wrote a book about that. It's called Blue Ocean Strategies, or Blue Ocean Strategy, rather. And it's a great book, and it talks, the principle behind it is that you should not, businesses should not swim in the ocean with all the sharks, with all the red blood in the water. They should be in the blue ocean where there's no sharks, kind of sailing off and doing their own thing and seeing success away from everyone else. And that was my theory. And it's kind of funny that I always had that feeling. I just felt that was the way that you should do business. And then I stumbled across this guy that had already written a book about it, and I was just kind of mind blown at that. And that had always worked well, and it worked well in this case too. And we didn't pay attention to what other people were doing. Yeah, we saw what they did. We did pay attention, I should say, but we didn't copy what they did. And it just really worked out well for us. What spoke volumes for us to our customers more than anything, and this has been true with every business we ever had, was just flat out customer service and honesty and servicing the people that you did work for. We had some people that, like I said, that didn't pick up their orders. We did everything on the honor system, and people were great about paying and showing up on time to pick up their orders and things like that. And for the thousands and thousands of dollars, probably tens of thousands of dollars that we made making crafts and selling them, we may have had a few $100s that we didn't get picked up on by doing that honor system. Now, if we did certain things, we did require upfront payment or a down payment on certain things. If it was a large customized shirt order or something like that, those things are just that's too risky. If something like that, if it was not somebody that as well, you're going to be able to get paid and things like that. But for things like that, when they were low dollar amount risks and just a little bit of time, the biggest risk was just losing some of your time. No question at all. That was the best way we did it back then, and it worked out really well for us. And I think that probably more than anything, some of the people that didn't pick those up, they might have found somebody else that just said they'd do it cheaper and just went somewhere else, because a lot of them would, when Tammy would try to contact them, they would block her on Facebook. And so that's just the way it is, and that's just a part of doing business. And you can't have all happy, great customers that you can make happy, and that they are going to be a good customer even if you haven't done anything to make them unhappy, quite honestly. So those are some of the things to be thinking about when you're going to go after selling your crafts or other things that you're going to make. Now, what other things did we make? One of the my favorite things that we made for folks were usually memorial blocks, the glass decorative blocks. We would get them in Hobby Lobby at the time, and maybe they still are, but I think they still are. They were on sale like every 2 weeks, and they were the glass blocks, had a little plug in the bottom so you could put the lights in them. And if you haven't worked with these are different from the glass. They look like the glass blocks you get at Lowe's to put, for construction use, but they're not. These are made for crafting, and they have a thing in the bottom to put lights in them or whatever, or it's got a plug down there. We used to make a lot of those for you put them in kids' rooms. They were personalized. But we used to make a lot of memorial blocks. So when people would pass away, folks would want one of these to set up, at their visitation or whatever, or maybe to give a loved one as a gift so they could, set it on their shelf and have it as a memorial to their loved one that passed away. And those were always really special. There was just something about that was always touching to us, that they trusted us to make something so special for someone that they had lost. And I remember one that was heartbreaking, but it was special too, because someone had a teenage brother and sister that had been lost to a drug overdose, and they were absolutely beautiful teenagers. I mean, just two of the best looking kids you could imagine. It's so heartbreaking, but at the same time was just, it was just something about it that warmed my heart that they allowed us to do that for them. And so those glass blocks were something really, really fun to make. They're easy to work with because they're glass. Vinyl sticks to it really well. You spray the frost spray on them if they wanted them frosted, and that worked really well. I did a video on that a long time ago on how to frost the glass blocks. A lot of people ask about, doesn't that frost spray scratch off? Or somebody said, used to see this all the time. I just couldn't figure it out. People would say two things. They'd say, well, I can scratch it off with my fingernail. And they'd say, I'm afraid it'll come off if I clean it with Windex. Don't scratch it with your fingernail. Don't clean it with Windex. I mean, it's a shelf sitter. Just dust it off with a feather duster. I don't know. It's like saying that the paint on my car comes off if I scratch it with a key. Don't scratch it with a key. But those are a couple of things that we made. We did quite a few signs for people, like pallet signs for decor, wall decor for their homes, or maybe their vacation home, or a gift for a wedding, vacation type decor for vacation homes. Those were really fun to make because they got me out of the basement, out of my office a little bit, and allowed me to go in the garage and sand and stain and seal with polyacrylic, a little bit of woodworking, things like that. So that kind of broke the monotony a little bit. Those are less profitable items usually because it takes a lot longer to make them, a lot more labor involved, but they're still fun to make, and it give you some really good, just something more pride in it to make than what than just slapping some vinyl on a plastic bucket or something. We did do a lot of those, or quite a few of those coat hangers I mentioned earlier that had names on them for. I think we did them for some cheer teams. Tammy would buy these wooden coat hangers. I had a thing set up out in the garage. I would spray paint them, sand them down, give them a light sanding, spray paint them, coat them. It was a lot of work. Put the vinyl on them, put their names on them. We actually did cheer stands at one point. I went to Lowe's and bought wood rounds and made stands and screwed them together and everything, cut them out, screwed them together, painted them, and put vinyl on them, personalized them. We did that one time. I didn't want to do it again after that. It was a lot of work, but they did come out well, and they loved them, of course. There's cheer teams and things like that, and I know a lot of people make bows for the cheerleaders and cheer teams, things like that, and they personalize those with heat transfer vinyl, and usually with glitter heat transfer vinyl for the cheerleaders. And then after Easter, of course, that led into springtime. Well, that was prime wedding time. We did a lot of wine glasses, putting vinyl, usually like silver metallic vinyl, on wine glasses with names and dates, the events. We would get quite a bit. We would buy a lot of beer mugs at Dollar Tree, the big glass beer mugs, did a lot of those with football or sports themes for Father's Day gifts. I remember a couple of years, and these might still be popular, but there were a lot of people. This went really kind of viral one year, was to make hammers for Father's Day. And that was to put, sayings along the handle of the hammer. And a lot of people would do that. And then they would dip it in polyacrylic and then hang them up and let them dry. Those were more shelf sitters and keepsakes. A lot of people would say, well, the vinyl is just going to wear off the handle when you use it. Those were, gifts for keepsakes, not meant to be used. But some people did stencil them and paint them and then put a coat of polyacrylic on them to coat them. And, I guess they did use them. But those types of gifts were really popular as well. We did quite a few hats, things like that for Father's Day. But those beer mugs and some of the coffee mugs and things like that were really popular back then. That were really easy to do, really easy to pump out, and these were all generally things that we could get at Dollar Tree for $1. And we were, our goal. For most things, now these Dollar Tree Easter buckets and the stuffed animals, we made, probably about $16 or $17 profit on those by the time we bought the items, put the vinyl on them, gas to deliver them and everything. Most items overall, when we were making gifts, we sold, our target was to try to make no less than about $10, gross profit on an item. So if we, bought a shirt for $4, we were going to try to sell it for $14 or $15, probably $15 with the vinyl on it. Probably, $1 or $2 vinyl, $4 or $5 shirt, and $15, $16, $17 for the shirt, maybe $20 if it had to do 2 colors, or maybe if it was double-sided, and get you your, maybe $10, $12 of gross profit out of that one shirt. And then if they bought multiple shirts, the unfortunate thing is a lot of people ask, what if I buy, if a lot of people say, what if I buy in bulk? What if I buy quantities? And then you say, well, how many? And they say 2, 3. What if I buy 2? What do you give me a discount if I buy 2? Quantities, we were always like, well, we price our things. Our answer was always, we price our things competitively. And it's really hard for us to do discounts because of the type of work we do. We price them on one, and if we weren't already competitive, we wouldn't be able to sell them as they are. And so we really can't do much of a discount on quantities unless you bought like a huge quantity, like 100 or more. And that usually just kind of killed the conversation as far as discounts. We didn't worry too much about that. Sometimes it was an exception. Sometimes there were items that maybe it's a good customer. Maybe they bought a lot of stuff from us. Maybe there were certain items that were very highly profitable compared to others that was a little bit easier to do that with. But for the most part, we tried not to get into those quantity discount questions and things like that because one, just cuts into your profit. 2, most customers you're never going to see again in this type of work. You have a handful that you do get repeat business from, but you can usually pick those out really quickly. They come back pretty quickly. You get messages from them pretty quickly. You get referrals, things like that. Who that circle is going to be usually, as to who's going to be the repeat customers and who you're going to get back. And who, like I said, who's going to be in that circle is going to surface pretty quickly when it comes to that. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking. They're wanting to ask the questions. Well, did you get a business license? How did you pay taxes? How do you handle sales tax? Things like that. Yes, that's a whole different conversation for a different video. Generally, you're going to charge and remit sales tax, or you're going to pay sales tax out of what you collected. You'll have to calculate that differently. If you're just starting out, you don't necessarily need a business license for a lot of things. I'll touch on some of this stuff here, okay? You're going to report that on your taxes. In most cases, for that scale of type of business, you want to talk to a tax, accountant, a CPA, or someone about this. Don't take that advice from me, but in most cases you can take that, put it on a Schedule C on your taxes, or a CPA can for you, tax person, tax preparer, and report your income taxes that way. You want to track all your expenses, so you want to track all your supplies and everything you purchase, your equipment, your computer, everything that's related to your business that you're going to spend money on. You want to track all that so that you can deduct it as an expense. You want to, we didn't do this, but we should have, because Tammy drove a ton of miles all over town delivering all these things, but we were just so busy we didn't have time to track mileage. But she could have tracked a ton of mileage and probably offset a lot of the taxes that we paid on what we made. When you get a little bit bigger, if you do decide to get a business license and get it, set up an LLC, that's kind of a buzzword. A lot of people throw that around. I want to get my LLC. I want to start my small business and get my LLC. And they talk about why you want an LLC. Well, the biggest reason people talk about wanting an LLC is it's a limited liability company. And the premise behind that is that if you're running a business and you do business with someone, something goes haywire and they sue you, they can sue your business, but then they can't come after your personal assets through the business. However, in a lot of cases, people don't keep their personal and business separate enough to allow that shield to work. So a good lawyer will a lot of times penetrate that corporate shield and come after you anyway, because they find out something like you're commingling funds, you're using personal assets in your business, and vice versa. You're just you've got all that commingled and things, and it's not really a separate business from your personal business. And it can get complicated. So make sure you do things right, get the right advice, get the right people involved, and talk to them and know what you're doing when you get to that point, and know what you're doing, and have that set up and handle it properly with proper accounting systems and things like that. Track everything properly, and just be organized with it, and don't put yourself in a position like that. On this scale of a business, it's usually not a big deal. You don't have too much to worry about, but usually the more successful you are, the more of a target you become. So if you are already rich, if you're doing well already, and this is just something you're going to do as a side hustle to make some extra money for the fun of it, and you're really doing it as kind of a hobby and selling stuff to make a little bit extra money, or whatever you're doing, and someone finds a reason they want to sue you, that's what you got to watch out for. If you have nothing, what are they going to sue you for? But again, don't take my advice on that kind of stuff. You got to think those things through, and really, really be careful and consider what you're doing, because once you set up the business, set up the LLC, you're going to want to, and liability insurance policy. There's just a whole lot of things to consider when it comes to those things, and do it right, without commingling everything. Get yourself in between a rock and a hard place with somebody. So hopefully that's all been kind of helpful to you guys. Like I said, this was over 7 years ago that we bought our first Cricut. It's sitting right down here on the shelf, and probably hasn't been turned on for a while because I've got so many other machines now. But that was what kick-started us and got us off the ground, and started making crafts, and eventually led to where we are today. I mean, went through the whole through the whole business of 4 years, and becoming the fastest growing business in Louisville, and I left that company, and then subsequently went to work for Cricut and worked for them for a year, and left that position first of this year, and now just back doing my social media thing again. It's got like I'm gone full circle, and it's really been quite a journey, and it's been fun. I've just learned so much and met so many great people along the way, especially all the crafters I've met and gotten to work with at some of the conventions. I've really missed that the past couple of years of not being able to travel and go anywhere and do anything, and I think we're getting close to being able to do a lot of those things again. Those are it's been a journey, and just coming full circle back to this, thought I would share some of that information, tell you how, we got to where we were making $10,000 a month or more on, using our Cricut. At the time, we just had the one Cricut machine, and you're not going to do it. I'll tell you this: you're not going to do it without a lot of hard work to make that much money. Anyway, you may or may not be able to do it alone. You may need help. Most people I know, when they're doing that much and doing that much business, they've got to have help. And sometimes they get some help and they grow even more and more and more, and end up doing a lot of craft shows at the holidays, things like that. And that was another thing. I should probably make that point when we would do craft shows during the holidays. A lot of the high schools around Louisville area would have craft shows, and we would get a booth, get a table set up there. We would actually take our machine and use our Wi-Fi hotspot. It wasn't easy because that was back when Design Space was web-based, but I typically use Inkscape to do the designs, and then I would upload them and just use it to cut. But the fact that we could personalize things on the spot was just phenomenal for us. There were other people at the same shows selling the same types of crafts and things that they had made with their machines, but they were already pre-made, like signs and holiday signs that were already done. We went and took tumblers, buckets, shirts, things like that. We took our heat press, had our Cricut machine, took a laptop, took all of our big box of vinyl, had everything set up. And people, what we would do, I had created like an order form. People would come by, and we'd tell them we would do it for them then, and we'd say, we've got a little backlog. We'll take your phone number, take down your order. You pay now, because that's the only way they'll come back, is if they pay now. And they would, of course, just walk around the whole place for like 2 hours anyway. So as soon as we would have their order ready, we would send them a text message. They'd come and pick it up. Remember, there were times, 2 or 3 of those craft shows, we would make, I wanted to say around $2,000 to $2,500 in a weekend at a craft show. It was quite lucrative to do it that way. So now, with the ability to use Design Space offline, even now the bandwidth and hotspots and Wi-Fi is even way better now than it was 7 years ago. So I can't imagine you would even have any problem doing that in most places. And those were just, they were not fun for me. I've never cared for doing shows, even trade shows and things. I've just always hated being the one working a trade show booth. But at the end of the day, when we finished, it was very gratifying to have not only made money doing it and spent the time with my wife there doing it, and we were both a couple of pretty intense people. So while we're there together, we're also butting heads sometimes and just trying to get the work done and everything. But it's gratifying to see people and see the look on their faces when you hand them something on the spot with exactly what they were wanting, with their grandchild's name on it. Or, I even had people who would, text me a picture, and I actually had my printer, and I would do print and cut and put their photo on a cup, their child's photo or whatever. Did as much as I could on site to accommodate what the customers wanted. And when you can do that, when you can meet your customers, when you can meet or exceed your customers' expectation and make them happy like that, they will pay. They will buy it. They will buy the items. The other thing back then that I noticed, and what we really kind of honed in on, was the sweet spot for buying an item at that time was $20. If you could make something and sell it for $20 and make that $10 of profit on that item or more, it was gold. When it went up to 25, the sales started to really drop on it, as far as what people wanted and what they were willing to pay. For whatever reason, the $20 was the magic mark, and we could sell things for $20 all day long. Didn't matter what it was. Not sure where that would be today. Of course, everything's more expensive today. Probably is going to be more of that $25 or $30 range compared to what it was back then. But if you guys comment below the video, if you have honed in on that and know where your sweet spot is, comment below and share some of the information with folks. But those were what really got us to where we are today, got us off the ground, and really couldn't. I wouldn't change it for the world, because that's why I'm here talking to you right now, is because we went through those exercises and did it the hard way. And like I said, you're not going to, it's hard work. You can't just, post something on Facebook and hope a bunch of people buy it. We hustled. Tammy was out there in those groups posting constantly all day, every day. At one point, she even got her account on Facebook. Back then, she got her account blocked one time for a couple of days because she had posted into a group too many groups in too quick of a time frame. And that was a painful couple of days, let me tell you, trying to deal with customers and everything when she was blocked and locked out of her account. But it was you have to hustle. You're not going to get anywhere if you don't hustle with any of this. We did also sell some on Etsy, a little bit. We did sell usually things that were easier to ship or mail, like decals, things like that. Tammy did a lot of these letters, these shelf setter letters. She would buy these wooden letters, I think at Joann's or somewhere, and she would cover them in different types of paper. So we would use different patterns and print them out. Then she would cover them and seal them and everything, spell out a child's name with different looks or whatever. So quite a bit of those, but different things that were unique that we could ship easy, lightweight, save on shipping. And even with Etsy fees and things, we priced things that if they bought it, great, we did okay on it. If they didn't, fine, it was just sitting there on the Etsy site. And we didn't really put things out there and worry about competing with anybody. If they wanted to buy our products, then they would buy our products. The nice thing about that was just like extra income that was coming in on the side on top of what we were doing. So while we were busy doing all of our main business, like, oh, we got another Etsy sale. Oh, we got another Etsy sale. So it was a little supplemental income in addition to what we were doing, as a home-based business and in-person type direct-to-consumer sales. So those different selling channels are something you should probably think about and consider the importance of those and how you want to do them. Go understand your Etsy fees, all those things, or whatever your selling channels are. If you're going to set up a Shopify site, there's pluses and minuses to all the different ways to do this. Typically, if you're selling on eBay or Etsy, the big advantages you have there are that there's already people on those sites looking for the types of items that you're making. If you're setting up your own website, you have to get the traffic to your website somehow. And there's different ways to do all those. Not going to go into that here because that's a whole different ballgame. But there's when you're doing Etsy and eBay, they have it's kind of like Google, and the reason that Google charges so for Google ads, AdWord ads and ad campaigns is because they have all the data and they know how to target those people. People are already coming to them asking for certain things, and they're able to deliver those links to people. Etsy's the same way. So they've got tons of people come to them looking for handmade items and tons of people lining up to sell them to them. Again, don't worry about, I do use it as a resource, or I did when we were selling items. So we would find similar items, see what they were selling for. There's a lot of free resources out there to research and look those things up. So just think about all those things. I don't know, I'm trying to think of anything else I may have missed. If you have any questions, post them down below the video. I'll try to answer them for you. If of anything that I didn't answer here, again, I didn't want to go too deep into the tax and the business license kind of thing. That's a whole different thing. It's different for every area. Taxes are different for every area. Income taxes are different for every area. And how you do those kind of things and requirements and reporting requirements and everything are different everywhere. So you have to understand what you're doing in your specific area when it comes to that. All I can give you is generalizations of what you need to be thinking about. And then, so, we've talked about selling channels, we've talked about the Dollar Tree buckets, and all the different things to be looking at, how to approach people. The selling channel, again, the selling channel we used initially was Facebook groups, and then now you have Facebook Marketplace, which makes it a little bit easier to reach different people in different areas. So, explore, look at those things, see what you can figure out. Word of mouth is another good one. Oh, I know one of the things I've mentioned earlier that I was going to touch on is I turned away quite a bit of business from businesses. And usually what it came down to was we would have someone, maybe ask, they would either see something Tammy posted, or maybe they bought something personalized for their kid or their grandchild or whatever. And then they would say, well, we have a business and we need some shirts or we need some mugs for our business. So Tammy would get their logo from them, and inevitably we wouldn't be able to do it. So it was almost always a waste of time for us. The reason would be their logos were made for print copies. So they look great on letterhead, they look great on a website, or look great on a business card, but you couldn't cut them in vinyl. They would use things like really thin fonts or, distressed fonts that just, you can't cut them small, things like that. And, I would, first couple that I talked to, I would say, I could alter it just a little bit, make your font just a little bit thicker. It would look just a little bit different. It would still be shaped the same and everything. They were like, no, you can't do that. You can't change anything about it. And I'd have to say, no, I can't do it. And those are the kinds of things that really need to go through a promotional company so that they can, order tumblers that have been screened or whatever for the logos on them. It just doesn't work the same when you're doing vinyl. And so we were wasting a lot of time just even talking to people. So it reached a point where we were doing so much business with people and individuals that we finally just, said, if they're a business and they're asking for this kind of stuff, just tell them we don't do businesses. And that's the direction we went with it. The bread and butter was just in individuals, people, their children, their grandchildren, and direct to consumer sales. So many more consumers are out there willing to buy these individual items that you're able to produce than businesses. And if you think about that, you realize that crafting, when you're making these items, you're doing short runs. When you're making shirts, you're doing 1 or 2 shirts. You're doing 10 shirts. That's still a short run. If you do 25 shirts, that's a short run still. When you go to a screen printer, most screen printers, at least several years ago when we were buying screen printed shirts that were licensed collegiate apparel, the most screen printers, no matter what you did, you had to buy 144 shirts minimum to do a screen print run. So, if you're doing 20, 25 shirts for someone, that's still a short run. And when you're producing things like that, you're more apt to be selling to the consumer market, not to businesses. Most businesses are going to buy much, much larger quantities, even if they're just buying them internally, unless they're a really small business and they need 10 shirts for a company picnic or something like that, or company softball team or whatever it is. Those are kind of rare, and we never even ran into that kind of thing. But when it comes to the other, mugs with company logos, whatever it was, we just wouldn't touch it. It just wasn't worth our time. Now, that also led me to believe that if I wanted to go into the personalized item business, or the personalization of doing corporate logos on promotional items and things like that, that could have easily been a side business as part of this, to be able to put out these promotional items and just work with larger companies that could produce that stuff. But I didn't want to do that. This just didn't interest me. It is just that was, to me, that's just selling items that someone else is making, and just didn't want to do that. I took more pride in selling. We took more pride in selling what we made, not just taking an order and reselling and marking up something someone else did for us. It just didn't seem the same for us. So, but yeah, I'm glad I remembered to mention why we turned down the business. So if you have any questions or comments, post them down below the video. Again, if you have questions about things that I didn't cover here, post them down below, and I'll try to answer them best I can. Just thought I'd get in front of the camera and talk a little bit and see, if there's things that I could say to people, to maybe encourage people to lose that feeling that there's so many people out there and there's just so much competition that they can't do anything and can't sell anything, because that's just not true. I don't think, even still, years later, with millions and millions of machines and people in the market doing it, I've always said there's plenty of food for everyone to eat. And what I mean is there's plenty of business out there to be had, especially when it comes to apparel. I mean, apparel, that's a consumable. You get a shirt, this is a brand new shirt I have on. I'm going to wear it for several months and it's going to, be worn out and have to be replaced. So those things keep turning, and it's a never-ending business. So just think about those kind of things. Same thing with things like coffee mugs. Coffee mugs get broken and they get lost and get left at work and left in someone else's car or whatever. There's a lot of things that just keep churning out there, a lot of products that just keep getting replaced and replaced and replaced over time, and it's a never-ending churning business. And that's what a lot of the crafting is. Even you carry it a step further, you go into something that's what's more of a hobby craft type thing is making wreaths. I know people who make wreaths, and they just make wreaths all the time because there's always people buying wreaths. So my light just went out. I guess my battery went dead. It got a little bit dark on me there. Sorry about that. It's time to wrap this video up anyway. Again, if you have any questions or comments, post them down below the video, and if I've missed anything, I'll try to answer it.